Okay, so we're all good to go. So, hi to everyone who's looking in on us today. Just want to welcome you all to Leah Middleton. So, thanks, Leah, for joining us. Leah's a barrister who specialises in criminal law, public law, and offender management. She lives in Beaconsfield with her husband and their two children. And When They Find Her is her debut novel. So, just want to mention I've started reading When They Find Her, but I haven't, I'm probably about a third of the way through. And so far, like, I found it's really gripping. It wants me to keep reading, which is really, really great. I love
That's
it
great
when,
for me to
yeah.
hear as well.
So I'm really looking forward to finishing it and find out what happens in the end. So thanks so much, Leah, for joining us. Do you want to tell
Thank
us a little
you.
bit more about your book?
Yeah, of course. So, When They Find Her is a psychological suspense novel, psychological thriller. It's also got some sort of criminal aspects as well, but largely it's a thriller. And it's about a woman called Naomi who um, used to have what for her was the perfect life. She had a very loving husband. She was pregnant with a first child, and she had always wanted to be a mother. But when the book begins, the reader finds her in a place where she is now living alone in a farmhouse that has always belonged to her family. Her husband has left, and he took their child Freya with him, and he lives with her in London with his new wife. And the opening of the book begins with Naomi being allowed to have her first overnight stay with Freya in a number of years. And during that overnight stay, a tragedy strikes, and Naomi makes a huge decision and mistake, which then catapults the reader into the rest of the book as they follow the consequences of her lie. And anything more is a spoiler.
Yeah.
So I can't go any further than that. But yeah, it's a book that's about lies largely, but it's about family, it's about motherhood and familial love, the relationship between mothers and daughters, and I guess the overarching theme of the book is how far people will go to sort of hang on to the life that they want for themselves and to hang on to what's most precious to them.
Mm. And working with criminal law, how much of what you've seen in your work has helped you with writing your book?
Well, it helps it's always helped in general in terms of coming up with ideas. It's to have an insight into that world. There's always sort of ideas coming into my mind, but with When They Find Her, I think I used to prosecute in court every day, and what always struck me was, and this is on both sides, so witnesses and defendants, people will often get caught in the most small of details that they'll either lie about or exaggerate for one reason or another. And it's so interesting to see how that lie can escalate. And I think we've all been in that. I think everyone has been in a position where they tell the smallest lie, just a tiny lie, and it's impossible to row back from. Whereas obviously in When They Find the lie that gets told is on a much bigger, like more tragic scale. But in the criminal world, it's so evident how easily humans can lie, and I find that fascinating. So that definitely sort of spurred the story at the beginning. But it's also it's been really helpful in terms of, I mean, that there's police procedure in the book and all of that, so that was really helpful. I've tried to keep it accurate and sort of truthful. But yeah, if you ever, I mean, I don't know what it's like over in Australia, but in the UK, sort of anyone can go in and out of a criminal trial and watch. And I would always recommend to anyone to just pop into a criminal court and watch, because it's the most fascinating place people watch.
Yeah. And when you thought about writing a book, was that the first idea you had, or did you write anything else first you tried, or?
It was it's the first novel I've actually finished and actually carried all the way through. I've had ideas for a long time. I think ever since sort of like early teens, I started sort of dabbling, but never really got further than a few thousand words. So When They Find Her is definitely the first idea that really, really grabbed me, and I had to keep on writing it. But I think the writing of it came at a particular time of my life. So the idea came a long time before, but when I committed myself to writing it, I had just gone back to work from maternity leave with my first daughter. So I had a 1-year-old. And I think that really helped me really understand what I wanted the book to be about, and that sort of relationship. I don't think a writer has to be a mother to write about motherhood, but for me it really helped. And then I finished the book when I was on maternity leave with my son, so my second child. So I think it just came at the right time for me to keep on pushing with it. But I've always been interested in crime fiction and thrillers, and I read so many of them. So yeah, I think it was definitely the book that was meant to be my first, and the others that came before just weren't meant to be.
Yeah. And we've got a few people watching, which is great. So just reminding the people watching, if you've got any questions for Leah, please type them in comments. I do have a couple of questions. So Belinda's wondering how long it took you to write your book.
So I started in November of 2017. And I finished to the point that I then sent it off to try and get an agent in summer of 2019. So it was about a year and a half. But I also had a little bit of a hiatus in that time because I had just a small health scare that sort of pushed me back a bit. But yeah, so that took about a year and a half. But then I did edits with my agent, and then I was editing with my editor until mid last year. So it was a few years, but that the sort of writing on my own was around a year and a half.
Yeah. And Anne's wondering when your book was out.
So it was out in ebook at the end of March, and I'm thrilled with how it's been received in ebook. It did really well, which has been wonderful. And it just came out in the UK in hardback, but I think in Australia and other territories in trade paperback in last Thursday.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so very recently came out.
Yeah. And Anne's also wondering what you like to read. You said you liked reading thrillers and...
So I do read a lot of thrillers, and I think that's just because, I mean, I love true crime. I love anything criminal. So I love reading that, but I also love reading, there's specific authors that no matter what they're writing, it's just an auto buy for me.
Yeah.
People so that for me is Jessie Burton. I love her. Elizabeth McNeil has just got a new one out called Circus of Wonders, which is meant to be amazing.
Okay.
I really want to dive into that next. And then I try as much as possible to support new debut authors like me. And there's been such amazing releases so far this year. So I have a couple of recommendations. There's a really, really wonderful book called Boys Don't Cry.
Okay.
By an author called Fina Scarlett. It's about two brothers and their relationship when their life gets very difficult, and sort of all the sort of issues around boys being boys, etc. And there's another really wonderful debut called Kololo Hill by an author, Nima Shah, which is about the expulsion of Ugandan Asians from Uganda.
Okay.
So that's really interesting as well. So I read quite broadly, but in general, I tend to turn to thrillers.
And could you tell us how hard or easy it was to get that first book published?
So I count myself very, very lucky. So in summer of 2019, I sent it out to try and get an agent. And I signed with my agent within 10 days. I think she offered to represent me. So I was very, very lucky there. And but then I worked very closely with her on editing it. She really helped me sort of get into like the pace of the book. A lot of people comment on the pace of the book and that it's quite relentless, and that's definitely what I wanted. And she really helped with that, getting rid of anything that really wasn't needed. So we worked together for a couple of months, for a few months actually. So from the summer until Christmas, and then she sent it out in January of 2020. And again, I was really, really lucky. I got the offer of the book deal from Penguin in less than a week.
Yeah, that's great.
So the turnaround of the process was very easy, but the sort of writing of getting it to the point to send it out to agents was, I mean, any writer will say it's a slog. It's hard work, and you know, that first book, you don't know if anything's going to come of it. You're putting in all these hours, having no clue at all whether you're actually going to get a deal. So it was difficult, but in terms of process, I mean, I've been incredibly lucky, because I know some authors wait for months and years to get their first book deal. Yeah,
that's great. It worked out like that for you.
It was like a dream of my agent sending it off. It was amazing.
Yeah. And we spoke about this a bit before we went live. Have you found a lot of authors being supportive of you as a debut author?
Yeah, so I was chatting to Jack about Nikki Smith, who told me to say hello to everyone when she found out I was coming to speak to you. Nikki, so just as an example, Nikki was, we'd never met. We followed each other on Twitter just because most writers do, just follow each other. And I was tweeting about being nervous about trying to find an agent. And she messaged me straight away and said, oh, you know, I'd be happy to help you. Do you want to send me your letter and I can look at it? And she gave me such amazing feedback. And it really blew me away, because especially like her debut novel, you know, some of the themes of our novels are similar. And someone could look at us and say, well, surely those two are competing, but it was never like that. And that's how I found it across the board. Writers have been so supportive, and I have this really, really amazing group of writer friends now who we're so close and we talk all the time.
Yeah, that's great.
And we really celebrate with each other. And it's so lovely. I mean, even in so other careers that I've done, so training to be a barrister, and then I've been chatting so much the past week that my voice is going. So becoming a barrister, and then before that, when I was a teenager, I liked acting, so I used to do a lot of that. And both of those careers are so competitive, and they're quite harshly competitive, that the support for other people sometimes just disappears. Whereas writing, just, it hasn't been like that, and it's such a wonderful community. So yeah, Nikki as one example is just amazing, but across the board it's been really, really wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it's a lot of authors have said that's similar to me, which at first really surprised me, but now everyone seems to be saying a lot the similar.
I think I mean, it's quite scary thing to sort of go on social media and say, oh, I want to be an author, and is there anyone out there who wants to be my friend? It feels very strange, like you're a child in a playground. But and I was nervous about it, but yeah, it's been really brilliant.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Belinda's wondering if you're working on anything new at the moment.
I am. So my second book has just gone to my editor, which is lovely. It's off my desk. So that is going to be coming out next summer. And this book is really sort of close to my heart. The main character is actually a prosecutor.
Okay.
And so that's what I used to do. And I'd always said to myself that I wanted to write a book where the main character was a prosecutor. I think there's a lot of criminal fiction out there where the lead character is either, a police officer or they're a defense lawyer. But I haven't read a great deal where the prosecutor is the one in that protagonist role. But it's about a woman who, she's in her role as prosecutor, she's at work, and she, at the very last minute, gets thrown into a hearing for an assault, a stabbing.
Okay.
And she realizes that the victim of the stabbing is a man who assaulted her when she was a teenager. But he got away with it. And the book then sort of delves into her obsession with trying to prove that he's not an innocent man. So it's I'm really proud of this book, and I know, my editor is amazing, and I'm sure she's going to come up with a million ideas to make it better, but I'm really pleased with it, and I hope when it comes out next summer people enjoy it.
Yeah, sounds like that's going to be an interesting read too. Patricia's wondering if you read your reviews.
Oh, I wish that I was one of these people. So many authors have said to me, just don't read them. It's fine, just ignore them. But I have to.
Especially your first time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe as you go on, it becomes easier to just not look at them. But for me, of course, there's always going to be negative reviews, and I never expected everyone to love my book. No one loves everything, and there are some. It's not an uncontroversial book, so I knew that there were going to be people that maybe didn't like it, but by far and large, the reviews have been just amazing, and it really sort of it gives me that sort of that passion, that sort of thrill of, oh, people are actually reading it and enjoying it, and understanding where I was coming from when I wrote it. And the negative reviews are just it's just a by part of the job, I guess. So I enjoy reading my reviews. But I do know a lot of friends who don't read them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's part of the joy of the book coming out and seeing the reaction.
Yeah.
And every single person who leaves a review is improving the chances of the book being seen by other people. So yeah, I'm very thankful for all the reviews.
Yeah. And Mary's one, or it sounds like you've got quite a busy life. Are you still working in your other job as well?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a very busy life.
And 2 children.
So I work full time, and then I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay, wow, yeah.
So it's a bit of it's a very busy life, but I'm a night owl. I stay up very late. So, people say, oh, you must be exhausted. I'm not really. I think because, my job is my job, and I do it because it's my job. And but writing is what I really love, and it gives me that sort of creative output. So once the kids are in bed and I sit down to write, it's sort of like a sitting in front of the TV with your feet up kind of feeling for me. So yeah, I tend to go quite late, but I just feel very lucky that I'm getting to do my dream at the moment. So being busy is fine.
Yeah. And Mary said, when do you fit in your writing? So is that mostly done at night?
Mostly at night, yeah. Every so often I'll book time off of work and I'll sort of try and write throughout the day, but mostly, yeah, it's once the kids are in bed and we've had dinner, I then sit down and I'll stay up fairly late to get my words in.
Yeah. And for you, how would you gauge the point when you can say that you're a successful writer?
This is something I talk about with other authors quite a lot, because what we tend to do as writers, but I think in general, just as people, is move the goalposts of what is successful.
Yeah.
So, you know, for so long, our only goal was to get a book deal. And then as soon as you have the book deal, it then moves again.
Yeah.
So it's really, really tricky. And the publishing world there are so many amazing books, and you can never quite tell how your book is going to be received. So I try not to think of it in terms of, oh, if it sells this many copies, or if I get this many reviews. So at the moment, I'm so pleased with the reaction to the book and what people are saying about it. And I think it feels like the book has been successful because the people who are reading it have really understood it.
Yeah.
And I think they've understood what I tried to achieve with Naomi and the themes of the book. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with everything that's happened so far. Of course, you know, a bestseller list or something like that wouldn't go amiss. But yeah, I'm trying really hard to just take each day as it comes and just focus on the writing, because so much of the career for writers is out of our control.
Yeah.
So it really is just all about the readers and how they're reacting to it.
And Mary's wondering if you have any authors that inspire your writing.
I think definitely, so Claire McIntosh.
Okay, yeah. She's great, Claire.
She's amazing. And I've read her books ever since her debut came out, So I Let You Go, which was just extraordinary. And I think it's that for her, it's what inspires me is she does what I want to achieve with my writing, is so she writes thrillers. Well, she's also written non-thrillers, but her thrillers, they're fast-paced, they're thrilling, but they are also all about the characters, and they're filled with emotion. You know, there are so many thrillers out there, and a lot of them are just about the pace and about being page turners. But I also want to have that emotion in my book, so she's really, really inspiring for me. Then there's Gillian McAllister, who writes kind of like moral thrillers, I would call them. So at the heart of all of her stories, there's sort of a moral question, like what would you do in this scenario, which I love. And her characters are always so fully fleshed out and believable. And then I also love, I've already mentioned her, but Jessie Burton. So her writing's, her genre is completely different. She's literary fiction, but I just, her turn of phrase and her language, if I'm ever sort of stuck, I sort of just turn to one of her pages and just see how she writes, and it sort of gives me a push to really think about the words I'm using and all of that, rather than just the story.
And could you tell us how much research you had to do for your book? Sounds like there was a lot from your work you were able to draw on, but was there other
Yeah, so
research?
I think with research, I tend to do research as I go along. So
Mm,
if a question arises, I'll then stop to do the research for it. I think most of my research was around what the police would do in certain scenarios. Luckily, I have a good friend who's in the police, and my sister-in-law is also in the police, so they gave me
okay.
really good advice, and I was able to
Mm,
come to them for certain things. But then there are also other. I won't say the detail because spoilers,
mm,
but there are various things that I sort of had to research that took up quite a lot of time, and also I dread to think if anyone looked through my search history.
mm.
But no, there was a really good amount of research, and it was something that sort of went on throughout the various drafts. So sort of down to the very last draft before it went off to print, I'd notice something, be like, oh, is that accurate? And go back
Mm,
and research it. So I think, yeah, definitely for crime fiction and for thrillers, there's actually a lot of research that goes into it, because the readers of that genre are very on the ball about the
yeah,
detail.
yeah.
They know what's right and what's wrong.
Mm,
And especially being a barrister and being in the field, I didn't want anyone to point to something and say, well, that wouldn't happen because it
mm,
doesn't reflect the best on me.
mm.
But so, yeah, I think largely it's accurate. There is some creative sort of maneuvering going on, because a lot of sort of court procedure and police procedures can be quite dull.
Yeah.
So I've tried to keep it accurate, but going with the story as well.
Mm, mm. And is there something that surprised you a lot with writing your first novel? Is there something that you didn't think or you never thought would happen or
Oh, I think, I mean, when I first started, I was so sort of inspired to get going, and I was so into the character and into the story.
mm,
And in the beginning, the words were just sort of like pouring out of me. Um, and then I'd heard so many writers say about the middle, and the middle being really, really tricky. And I was like, nah, I'm fine. I'm just
mm,
going like at a rapid pace. And then I just hit around 40,000 words, and it was like running
the
into a
end?
wall at full pelt.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh no, this
Mm,
is what people were talking about. And I ended up doing what I thought I wouldn't do, which was I skipped ahead and went to like the final third, and I wrote that, and then went back and sort of tried to fill in the middle.
mm,
Um, so that did actually surprise me, even though I'd been warned so many times that the middle is just the trickiest part. But so that was really interesting, actually, because I think so many authors have that same
the
expect.
same. Yeah.
I don't think I've chatted to any writer who says that they find the middle easy. It's
Mm,
definitely the bit where you're starting to lose stamina, and also the story um, isn't always the most fleshed out in your mind.
yeah.
But yeah, that was really interesting, because
Yeah.
my pace was, I was going, and then I wasn't.
Mm. And I'm interested to know what was your first idea when you started this book? What first came to you?
um, so the very first seed of the idea was a long time before. So I was at university doing drama and theatre studies.
Mm,
And so I did drama before I transferred over to law. And I had to, in my last year, we had to direct a piece. And I directed sort of a modern interpretation of an ancient Greek play, Medea.
mm,
And Medea has no bearing on the actual story of when they find her, but that sort of idea of writing a book that's centered around a mother and how far someone can be pushed in under certain circumstances sort of started playing on my mind. But I mean, that I was 21 then, and I didn't start writing until I was 29, around then, I think, 28. So it was a long time. And then it was once I started being in court every day, and that idea of sort of motherhood and circumstances sort of combined with this fascination with lying. And yeah, those ideas sort of came together, and I started formulating the idea for When They Find Her. Yeah. So it was a couple of things, and I think that the same has happened with book 2. Is I wanted a prosecutor as the main character, and then the idea of a victim coming across the perpetrator years later, and those two sort of melded together. So it's a couple of ideas sort of fusing. Seems to work for me.
Yeah. And could you tell us what you like doing when you're not writing and reading and working?
in the slithers of time. So my husband and I are massive foodies. So we love sort of seeking out new places to eat, and food markets. For example, on Wednesday, we're going into, so we've just today, another phase of our lockdown has lifted, so we can go into restaurants.
Go out more, yeah.
Yeah, so far we've only been allowed to eat outside, whereas now we can go inside, so lots of places are opening up. So we're going into London on Wednesday and going to this inside food marketplace, which we're very excited about. But then, yeah, it's just doing stuff with the kids. They love being outside. So like going to farms and theme parks and things like that. But when it comes to just me, it tends to be food related or often just film related. I'm a big film person as well. So if I ever get the time to sort of sit down and watch a new series or a film, I love doing that as well.
Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Do you want to tell people how they can keep in touch with you?
Yes. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram. So on Twitter, I am at Leah Middleton, but with a 0 instead of the O, as someone has taken my name and they're not even you. They've been blocked. They've been banned from Twitter. And on Instagram, I'm at Leah Middleton Author.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks everyone who joined in tonight, and hoping that I can talk to you again maybe when your new book is out, and I'm looking forward to finishing When They Find Her.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.